So this is Justin,
Howdy.
and he and I were just talking. He was telling me about something. He used to be. Go ahead and tell it.
I used to be an active Mormon, or an active member of the LDS Church, which is like the primary Mormon church, and I no longer am.
Got it. So, what was on your heart this morning?
Well, I was thinking about a little bit about Jeffrey Holland's speech that he gave at BYU. Jeffrey Holland is an apostle for the LDS Church, so he's one of the primary leaders. And for a period of, I think, almost a decade in the 80s, he was the president of BYU. So he has a direct connection to BYU, and he was there. Essentially, his speech or this talk that he gave was to faculty members, professors, whatnot. Basically talking about church doctrines, especially as it relates to LGBTQ issues, and basically saying that the people who work for BYU need to uphold the church's standard and the church's doctrines in relation to LGBTQ issues.
So when he's saying the thing about the musket, what is that? Yeah. Is that something based in Mormonism?
I don't see a direct correlation to Mormonism necessarily, other than Mormonism has a violent history.
Okay. And another thing we would say is, we could say, potentially, we're not going to try and come from a place of absolute, or I'm not going to try and come from a place of absolute. He's using a term musket, and a musket is outdated.
Way outdated.
Would you say also his beliefs are outdated?
That's a good point. Yeah, they are. And I think, I read one article, and I think it's a really good idea that why, when we're talking about, the LDS Church also has a doctrine of love and inclusion. They have a Christian theology. They believe in Christ. They believe in grace. They don't believe in grace the way like a traditional Christian would, but they believe in love. They believe in Christ's principles. The first commandment was to love God and to love your neighbor as thyself.
I think you're being a little judgmental, because for about 3 seconds he talked about Christ's love in that video.
I think that was my point, right? So instead of talking about love and inclusion towards our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, he's using the metaphor of a musket fire.
Yeah.
He also used another basically violent metaphor, or when he talked about don't lob or don't aim friendly fire at BYU. I think he's talking about people within BYU stop aiming friendly fire at the church's policies, and that friendly fire, of course, would be like, hey, we need to change this doctrine, or we need to reconsider our stance toward gay people.
Yeah. It's interesting. We met at this place called the Living Room Cafe, and next to the Living Cafe is a mortuary.
Right.
And this mortuary used to be a club, a bar.
Okay. I didn't know that.
It used to be a bar. It's like, even before I turned 21, my brothers used to hang out at this place. I think it was called Winters.
Okay.
And it's interesting that I can respect, when you first told me about what was going on, I can respect that people staying strong on their beliefs.
Sure.
Even if they're outdated.
Sure.
To a certain extent, because I believe that I am coming from a place of compassion more than he is.
Okay.
That's what I personally believe. I could be wrong. And a way that a perfect experiment, after I go back into this, is watch the video on Elder Holland, with his old ass ideals.
That's how they refer to him.
Yeah. So, but Elder Holland's, watch his video and turn off the sound. His voice is very pleasant, but if you turn off the sound, you can see a bunch of repressed anger.
Okay.
In the whole thing, which can be caused by having a bunch of beliefs forced on you that you can't go into the vibration of your ideal self and what you believe. More like a more compassionate sort of way is saying, okay, people have a different view, but not attacking them with musket and everything like
Right.
that, trying to do it. Here's what I did. I wasn't to the extreme that he was, or the extreme that he was showing it, but I didn't necessarily understand that as much. But I was hanging around a lot of college students, and I saw that they were coming out of the closet, and I was like looking at it, I was like, okay, let me look at this. And I was like, well, I'm coming out of the closet, like I aligned with them. I said, well, I'm coming out of the closet as a straight man with my authentic self. And this is like one of the hardest things that I've ever done. A lot of these guys are doing it when they're 18, 19, 20. I was doing it at 38, and it was hard as fuck.
And you're straight.
Yeah.
Everyone's okay with you.
Yeah. Well,
most people.
Well, not because of that, but they I mean, I do rub people wrong for like other things.
Sure.
and other beliefs, which is I'm not complaining about that. That's an awesome thing. So going back to the focus of where, like what's one? I'm kind of like going on another track. What's something that's like eating you up on this?
Well, before I get to that, let me come back to, I love your comment about listening to Holland and not watching him, and that you can hear, I think the word you used was like pent up frustration or angst or anger.
I actually said turn the sound down, but that's something else that you can do.
Okay.
Both will get,
That's
there's
a
blind
good
spots.
point, because his voice is very pleasing. He's a very good speaker.
Yeah.
So if you watch him, okay, so it reminds me of a quote that a friend sent me from Ann Carson when we were discussing this, and that might speak to some of that angst that it looks like he's got, where it says, to live beyond one's myth is a precarious thing. And that's kind of what it feels like. So that's where I lie. You're asking like how do I, what am I feeling about this?
Yeah.
The LDS Church and Elder Holland especially in this moment, the church is trying to live beyond its myth, and it doesn't work. When the myth dries up,
okay, so
you can't keep living that.
Live beyond the myth. What exactly does that mean?
So they have a narrative, right? And this narrative is a myth. Myths aren't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to say that the religion, that the LDS Church or the Catholic Church or any church or organization that has...
Do you mean that I'm not going to get a planet for doing this?
You are... I mean, you might. I mean, Kolob, right? You might get something like Kolob, I think is what Mormons talk about. But that's a narrative. That if you live this certain way, you're going to have certain blessings or certain rights or a certain kind of life that's a great life. And if